Welcome to Quicksand, the most important news in pharma and biotech this week. As part of the implementation of 2013's Drug Quality and Securities Act, the FDA released draft guidance explaining how it will formulate a list of bulk drug substances, known as the 503B bulks list, for which there is a clinical need, and what substances outsourcing facilities can use to compound drugs. The 20-page draft guidance is part of FDA's Compounding Policies Priorities Plan and follows a fungal meningitis outbreak from 2012 that resulted in more than 60 deaths and 750 cases of infection. The draft discusses FDA's interpretation of the statutory phrase, bulk drug substances for which there is a clinical need, which the agency says means that there is a clinical need for an outsourcing facility to compound a drug and that the drug must be compounded using a particular bulk drug substance. In assessing the clinical need for a drug to be compounded from bulk substances, FDA's analysis will consider whether attributes of the approved drug may make it unsuitable to treat certain patients and whether the compounded drug is intended to address what makes it unsuitable. FDA also said it intends to consider whether the drug product to be compounded must be produced from a bulk drug substance rather than an approved drug. The agency also notes that compounding drugs using bulk drug substances can undermine FDA's approval process and reduce the incentive for manufacturers to seek approval of brand name or generic drugs. The FDA is pushing stakeholders to help in developing patient-focused drug development guidance. The push comes as officials from FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation Research, patient advocacy groups, and research organizations at a public workshop pointed to several existing barriers in collecting and incorporating patient experience data for purposes of drug development, such as a lack of a methodological framework for identifying what measures are the most important to patients. FDA directives created by 21st Century Cures Act of 2016 led to the formulation of a plan last year for implementing provisions that related to patient-focused drug development. The plan consists of 4 guidances on approaches and methods to bridge from initial patient-focused drug development meetings to fit-for-purpose tools to collect meaningful patient and caregiver input for ultimate use and regulatory decision-making. The planned guidances are aimed at addressing areas of needed policy clarifications, such as methods for collecting comprehensive patient input and measures for identifying specific set of impacts that can be incorporated into clinical trials and regulatory decision-making. FDA officials described potential areas for industry contribution through developing and submitting draft guidance for agency consideration. Such contributions could include the areas of natural history of development to inform future research and serve as a basis for clinical trial recruitment, forming centers of excellence in study and treatment of diseases, and venture philanthropy to ensure access to the best treatments. Heron Therapeutics' long-acting local anesthetic met all of its primary endpoints and key secondary endpoints in a pair of phase 3 trials, setting it up for a new drug application in the second half of this year. HTX11 is a long-acting formulation of the standard of care bupivacaine solution combined with the anti-inflammatory medication meloxicam. The trials pitted the anesthetic against placebo and bupivacaine in patients undergoing bunion-correcting surgery or hernia repair. The bunionectomy trial compared a 60 mg dose of HTX11 to a 50 mg dose of bupivacaine and placebo to control post-operative pain in 412 patients. Patients treated with HTX11 had a 27% decrease in pain intensity compared to those on placebo and an 18% reduction compared to those taking bupivacaine. The HTX11 group also took significantly less opioids than the placebo group and the bupivacaine group during the 72 hours following surgery. As for the hernia repair patients, the treatment arm received 300 milligrams of HTX11 compared to the standard 75 milligram dose of bupivacaine. The HTX11 group demonstrated a 23% and 21% drop in pain intensity compared to placebo and bupivacaine, respectively. The 72-hour post-surgical opioid use closely mirrored the results for the bunionectomy trial. HTX11 could come in handy in the fight against the opioid crisis that rose as doctors became less judicious about prescribing the powerful painkillers. Novo Nordisk presented phase 2 data showing that subcutaneous injections of its GLP-1 product, semaglutide, currently approved to treat diabetes, help patients lose up to 13.8% of their body weight after 52 weeks. That figure significantly topped the weight loss patients saw on placebo at just 2.3%. What's more, most patients in the semaglutide arm benefited. 83% of them lost 5% of their body weight or more, and 65% lost more than 10% of their body weight. Results are encouraging for Novo Nordisk, which is investing big dollars into the obesity field. In November, the company said it would launch semaglutide's fellow GLP-1, Saxenda, in additional countries and lobby to get obesity recognized as a chronic disease. And on the semaglutide front, the company plans to launch a 68-week phase 3A trial this year in about 4,500 patients, along with a cardiovascular outcome study in 12,500 patients. The potential opportunity in obesity is huge, but the market has been unkind to other drug makers. Heron Therapeutics, maker of obesity therapy Contrave, declared it would file for bankruptcy and auction off the unsuccessful products. Rivals Qsymia from Vivus and Arena from Eisai haven't fared much better. Their makers have faced investor unrest and massive job cuts since they rolled out the disappointing treatments. In what may be the first foray by Big Pharma into the sale of medical marijuana products, Novartis has struck a deal with a Canadian company that sells medical cannabis products not only in its home country but also in Europe. Nanaimo, British Columbia-based Tilray announced that it has a binding agreement with Sandoz Canada to be its exclusive supplier of non-smokable, non-combustible medical cannabis products. While Canadian law only allows companies to mail their products directly to patients, the company said that subject to future regulatory changes, Sandoz Canada will wholesale and distribute the products to Canadian hospitals and pharmacies. It also calls for the Swiss company to use its expertise to educate pharmacists about the products and to help Tilray develop new products in dose forms. Tilray claims to be the first Canadian cannabis company to get manufacturing approval from the European Medicines Agency and says it sells products in 10 countries across the continents. It also has a deal with a German wholesaler to distribute its products to pharmacies in that country. While Novartis may be the first big pharma player to step into the new but burgeoning world of medical marijuana, it is not the only drug maker to make a bid for the business. In 2016, Teva struck a deal to be the sole distributor in Israel of a cannabis inhaler developed by Psyche Medical. At the time, Psyche had 26,000 medical cannabis consumption licenses, but projected that number would double by 2018. In addition, Heron Therapeutics won FDA approval in 2016 for a liquid formulation of dronabinol, a pharmaceutical version of THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. Thank you for listening to Quicksand, episode 23, March 26, 2018.